Welcome to the Bobby Couto Show, where we dive into the fascinating world of human experiences and excellence. With special guests, real-life anecdotes, and thought-provoking discussions. Get ready to unlock and tap into your absolute potential with your host, manifestation coach, Bobby Couto.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome episode 101 of the Bobby Couto Show. I am in Studio B. It is my great pleasure to be with Seth Aitken today. Welcome, sir.
Thanks, Bobby.
Right, Republican candidate for the DA of Bristol County. Yep. Hasn't happened in over 52 years.
That's right.
Insane, crazy, right? Like, just amazing to be here. I just want to say thank you very much for reaching out. I had Manny Silver on the show.
Sure.
Manny Silver on the show. And he was absolutely amazing. Great conversation. Then Boomer came in. Like, all of this amazing activity that's happening. And I got to tell you, the pleasure that I have most is that I get the opportunity to meet people like yourself. People that are standing up for our community. People that actually believe in what they say, right? Because, doing the research and going through all this and realizing that, there's one word in here that stands out the most to me, and that is accountability. If there's anything I mention on this show the most, it's, we can all complain. Constantly we complain and we say things and we see, well, that happened and there was no accountability. And, I see that you have a push for that and a passion for that. And I think more so now than ever before, we need that passion. We need that force.
I agree.
So thank you so much for being here, man.
I'm
I
so
appreciate
glad to
it.
be here. This is great.
Yeah, it's amazing. You have quite the resume, sir. First of all, thank you for your service. U.S. Army.
Appreciate
you
it.
did 8 years. You were an
8
officer
years.
there.
Yep.
And what was it you were doing in the Army?
I was a combat engineer.
Oh, okay.
Everyone says combat engineer. I sort of split my time halfway between construction engineering and combat engineering. So lead soldiers to build it, and then you lead soldiers to blow it up. Those are the two sides of the engineer corps.
Yeah.
And I did both, loved both. When I was in Korea, it was my first assignment right out of undergrad. Went to Fort Leonard Wood for a while, trained up, and then went to Korea, and I was platoon leader of a what they call a construction support engineering platoon.
And this is 2000?
No, this was, 96, 97.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
So up until 2005. So it was 97 to 2005 was my service.
Oh, okay.
And spent about a year and a half in Korea, just under, and did some awesome stuff. It was an incredible experience, to be in a place where history had happened. I mean, we were, essentially doing exercises in all the same places where great battles of the Korean War happened.
Yeah.
And as someone who loves history and loves to sort of, see where these things took place, it was a real education and a great opportunity to learn leadership and learn from some great soldiers how to lead soldiers.
And so why the Army? Was there a particular reason? I always ask that story because most times people are like, I just happened to walk into the recruiting office and that's where I ended up.
So, it's funny. We were talking before the show about the 80s. So, at that time, the little G.I. Joes came out. Yeah. And that was kind of like I was just obsessed with them. I had all of them and, had the aircraft carrier, the whole bit. It was crazy. And so it was something I had wanted to do. And, I'm probably being a little bit glib in saying it was G.I. Joe, but I had a predisposition toward military service probably from the time I was 5 or 6 years old. My two big influences would have been Alex P. Keaton from Family Ties. I was a Republican since I was little. I had a briefcase in the 3rd grade. And
he was very influential. I've had a couple of people on my show that have mentioned him.
Absolutely.
Including Jessica Machado. She was the last one.
I think Jessica and I are probably kindred spirits in that regard. Because we have talked about that. It's really funny.
That's funny.
And then the other was just, the desire to be a soldier. And that came from different influences. And my father was an Army medic during the Vietnam era. So, that was instilled in me. That was important. And then it turned out that ROTC was going to be able to pay for college. Otherwise, I went to Syracuse. I don't think we could have afforded that at that time. But they paid for the majority of my college education. I was commissioned the day after graduation. Wow. And 4 or 5 months later was on the DMZ leading soldiers and trying to figure out how I'd gotten there.
Right. So here you are, right? You're in Korea. And then you say to yourself, I'm done with this. I want to go into law. How does that happen? Like, explain that one.
So I came back and so it's funny. I've been married for 26 years. Love of my life. My best friend. She's unbelievable. We met in high school and had, this intense sort of, summer movie relationship, it exploded in the way that those things do.
Yeah.
And we hated each other and didn't talk. And then she found me. I was in Korea, and she called my mother, which is a really remarkable thing. You take your life in your hands, just calling Claudia Jean Aitken and saying, "Hey, where's Seth?" Because she's very protective. But Jen did that. Emailed me because at that time, this was now 98.
Oh, you got mail.
So yeah, that was it, right? It was literally AOL
Right.
dial-up.
Yep.
And I had a Korean phone line. It took forever.
Yeah.
We emailed for about 6 months. And when I came home, I had a couple months left of my tour, came home for like a week or two. And in that week or two, I said, "This is the girl I'm going to marry." I actually designed her engagement ring from Korea, faxed it to a custom jewelry place at the foot of Mount Hood in Washington State. Yeah. I have a design background. My undergrad was in design.
Okay.
So I gave them all these drawings. They made me a beautiful custom ring, faxes. It was crazy. Again, 1998. And we were married 6 months later. So it was kind of one of these things where we knew each other, happened quick, but it was, when I think about my time in the service, I think about that.
Yeah, right.
And so after getting out, so I did a couple more different assignments, and she's just an incredibly kind of brilliant, capable person.
Behind every great man, brother. You know
No
what I mean?
doubt,
Right,
no doubt.
right.
And I think it was really hard for her to be an Army wife. And when you think about where the Army sends you, it's just there's not a ton of opportunity in these towns. You figure the government's buying the cheapest real estate they can find, right? And even though culturally there was some awesome places we ended up living and going, it was important for us to get back to New England. So ultimately we did. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, and I was actually doing a lot of design work, doing a lot of painting and drawing and freelance creative work.
Yeah.
And I was like, geez, do I want to do that, or do I want to pursue something that, and I always assumed we would have sons. I don't know why. When my son is old enough to ask, what do, I want to be able to tell him that I do something that helps people, that makes a difference.
Sure.
And as much as I loved making art, it always felt like, geez, there's more that I can give here. So I went to law school. And
This is when you went to Roger Williams.
this is when I went to Roger Williams.
Yeah.
And so
So you stayed local. You were
stayed local.
Yeah, you stayed local. Yeah.
So I was working full time during law school. I went to law school full time, but I was able to finagle my job so I could still work full time to do the whole thing in 3 years.
Yeah. I did notice that. I'm like, wow, you did that quick.
It was kind of wild.
Yeah,
it was
right.
intense.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have done it without Jen. We had our firstborn, Shepherd, who's now 21. He was a baby, and our second son was born a month into law school. And so she was just kind of doing it all while I was studying, and got through and joined the DA's office under Sam Sutter. And so did a few years there, went to private practice with my father. And that was an incredible experience. I'll tell you what, and I kind of joke about this, when you're 15, 16, you think your dad is just, an idiot, right? You think he's full of crap and doesn't know anything.
Doesn't know anything.
And so the opportunity to work with him and learn from him and practice together was so cool. It was just so good. And I think kind of gave me an appreciation for, one of the things that's part of my platform is I want to make justice more accessible to elderly victims of crime. I think it's critically important. And I think they're so susceptible to a lot of the scams and things out there, the financial crimes, that frankly, the DA's office is not that good at prosecuting or investigating. They have some great people, but it's just not a focus.
Right.
And I think working with him and then watching him sort of get older and go to retirement and start to have some of the challenges of being older, but having had that sort of investment of time with him, I think gave me an appreciation for that generation and just how incredibly valuable they are and often overlooked.
Right.
So, so that was a really significant, developmental time for me as an attorney and figuring out what I wanted to do. I went back to the DA's office, and then after a few years, went to the city, worked in the law department for about 9-10 months, represented the city in all sorts of things, lawsuits and gun appeals and that sort of thing. And then one day they had gone through a couple candidates for city administrator. You probably remember this.
Yeah.
Guys pulled out, just said, I don't want any part of this. And I was like, I don't know what the big deal is. I can handle this. And so I did it for 3 years. They offered me the job. I did it for 3 years.
Sure.
And then finally, as happens in the city, Knives Out.
I
was like, okay, I don't need this anymore.
There was a lot of noise. It was wild.
Yeah. And it's funny. You tell yourself, during the 3 years, it was pretty constant. Like kind of wondering where things were going to come from.
Yeah. But you were picking up on other things, though, right? There were other things that were like, not to bring up old tales, but you were noticing certain things where you're like, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't seem right, And
so you're right, and I don't want to get too much into that.
No, I don't. Right.
Because there was a lot there.
But it's important that people realize that you're perceptive. You're not just letting things just kind of go by. You're attempting to be like, hey, this doesn't seem right.
That's true. So in context, the mayor is a very hands-on guy, right? You grow up in the schools. You spend a lot of time as a vice principal. You think of leadership as a very hands-on thing, and I don't disagree with that. So being his city administrator wasn't really, being the kind of city administrator that other past administrators had been. Where you have a mayor who's a little more hands-off, you become kind of a quasi-mayor.
Sure.
That wasn't what I did. My job was to kind of carry his message, carry his water to the city council and to different people, regardless of whether it was my message. I wasn't elected; it didn't need to be my message.
Right.
But I still had a lot of opportunity to try to figure out, okay, how can we be better? How can we do things differently? And in that process, you find stuff out. You're like, oh my gosh, let's fix this.
Right,
and
right.
the problem with that, trying to fix things without context for all the history and what had happened, whatever, is sometimes you really upset people. And I don't feel bad about that, but it sort of came to a head. And here
you know when to say when. You know when
when.
to say when. Yeah.
So it was an easy decision. I kind of had been thinking, okay, I feel like this has run its course for a little while. I knew that whatever happened, I could go practice law and be very happy.
Sure.
I feel like it's never a good idea to be in a job that you have to have in order to support your family. You always have to be able to sort of know what your plan B is, and because things turn, and right. you find out that, hey, this is not where I'm supposed to be anymore.
Sure, especially in the political world, right?
Absolutely.
Because someone here today is not here tomorrow,
It's
and
true.
if the new guy doesn't want you there, then you're not there anymore. So you're literally on a 2-year contract.
Right.
if you make it to 2 years.
That's right.
Right.
And so after 3 years, I had already been thinking about it, saying, geez, I don't feel like I'm as effective as I'd like to be because there's other political realities that are just, they're just there.
Sure.
And so when all the stuff came to a head, I said, you know what? I said, let me offer my resignation, try to make it easier for the mayor to finish, what he's trying to do in his term, and also not create a distraction, because we were already in the midst of a bunch of people fighting, about, different people's opinion of their job and whether they should stay, whether they should go. And it was so distracting and so difficult for the people who were in government center trying to do work. There are some amazing people there, amazing people with such great attitudes in spite of, not really always being paid what they're worth. I mean, really good folks. And I loved working with them.
Yeah.
I loved getting to know them. But when you become the distraction, you're no longer able to help them.
Right.
So stepped away. And opened my practice probably the next day. My office is on Bedford Street, and it's been incredible. It's been, I've never, had a moment where I was afraid I couldn't, support my family. I mean, that's the basic, right? It's the cover.
And you specialize in criminal and consumer litigation.
Yeah. So consumer litigation.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
So that's a funny thing because it sounds kind of very complicated and corporate.
Yeah.
What it ends up being most of the time is a contractor doesn't do what he's supposed to do, and a homeowner needs some help.
Gotcha.
So that comprises a lot of it. There's definitely some civil defense work that I do where people are accused of things and. I got to say, very rarely do I ever take a case where I feel like, geez, I'm totally on the wrong side of this. Like, I'm really fortunate to have a number of really amazing people that are just trying to make it in the world on the civil side who I'm glad to be able to help.
Gotcha.
The criminal side is a different thing because the criminal side, I think you always have two clients, right? You have the client that you actually represent, and then you have the system because you have to hold the system accountable.
Sure.
You have to make sure that if it works for the person that nobody thinks about, if it works for the person who is barely able to keep housing and barely able to buy groceries and barely able to do they're on the margins of society. If the system works for them and their civil rights and fundamental human rights are protected, then it's going to work for you and me in that instance where we're accused of something.
Sure.
And so to me, it's this really solemn obligation. There's a lot of lawyers working in the district court that feel exactly the same way. And I kind of love it. To be honest with you, I don't see it as being two opposite adversarial sides, prosecutor versus defense attorney. I think we're both essentially trying to make sure the system works, but coming at it from different perspectives.
But you have a unique perspective because you do both. You've done both.
I've done both.
And
yes.
so not everyone can say that. So you really have, I mean, a three-dimensional view of the situation. You know, when I looking through this, I'm like, man, if this is his resume, like hire this guy. What are we waiting for? You know what I mean? Like seriously.
I appreciate that.
No, I appreciate that because, it's, when I read things in 66% of cases are not tried because witnesses don't show up. Like I say to myself, well, whose responsibility is that?
So, I've been writing a lot about that and talking a lot about that because I think it's a huge problem.
Yeah.
But what's difficult about solving that problem is that it's not one of those you can just point to one person and say it's their fault this is happening. The reality is that cases take months to work their way through a system. So by the time 9 months, a year and a half passes, you have a victim who's like, geez, I just want to get on with my life, or I'm too afraid to testify, or I'm no longer interested, or I called the police in the first place just to get him out of the house. I never expected this. So I mean, and I could keep going. I mean, there's 100 different reasons why people don't want to show up. So it's really, if we have the advocates and the prosecutors, and the advocates play this essential role, it's a specific job in the DA's office. If we have the advocates and prosecutors to really build a relationship based upon trust, based upon understanding, based upon a perspective of what that victim and what that witness is going through and what they're thinking and what they're feeling, I think we stand a much better chance of getting those people to court. You're never going to have 100% of the cases go forward. You just aren't. But being able to build a relationship is part of it. The other part of it is that there's cases that should have been resolved much earlier on. And the problem there is that most of the prosecutors, there's 25 prosecutors in the district court, and that's all four courts. So Attleboro, Taunton, New Bedford, Fall River. Between the four courts, there's 25-ish prosecutors, and they handle about 18,000 cases a year. All right.
Wow.
And so looking at that number and doing that division, how many cases per prosecutor, there has to be some discretion, some ability to resolve cases without having to go up 7 layers of the flagpole, we used to call it in the Army, of going up to your supervisor and his supervisor and his supervisor's supervisor. You've got to be able to resolve cases and have the expertise and have the support and have the training to be able to resolve cases. Because otherwise you end up, everything goes to the trial session. Nothing gets resolved, and then it just gets dismissed, and there's no accountability.
Or a continuance.
And then ultimately a dismissal. So, so there's some systemic problems that I think can be addressed, and then there's some sort of a relational manpower things that I think could also address the problem. It's a lot of little things that I think together could have a big impact.
Right. And I think most would agree that more recently than ever before, we see certain crimes take place and certain actions take place. And really, we're like, wow, what came of that, right? And then we're like, well, he was sick. He was mentally ill. Or a perfect example, the Will Flanagan situation, right? And I say to myself, wow, it's not even like he had a chance, right? Like, so this person is mentally ill, walking the streets, and yet there's no way for us to follow up on these people, right? There's no way, they end up with some type of probation, they never show up again, and then nobody ever follows up. And so the question is, how do we get our arms around that situation where we could say, you know what, where's the line between the mental health and the actual criminal, right? And that's, to the person who is the victim, to me, it doesn't matter. Like, I'm the victim. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, but to you, like, how do you differentiate that, and how do you protect the citizens from those situations? I think it's such a profound situation. Like, there is no mental health hospitals. There is no support. So, like, what do you do in those situations?
So that's where the defense attorney and the prosecutor really part ways, right? Because as a defense attorney, the why is so important. It's, hey, he has mental illness. He can't take this disposition because of immigration consequences. He can't, he can't lose his license because he has to provide for his family. All the whys and the consequences, the collateral consequences, we call them, not the actual sentence, but everything that happens as a result of the sentence, just in life. He'll lose housing, that sort of thing. that stuff matters to the defense attorney.
Sure.
To a prosecutor, I kind of think there has to be a little bit of singularity, which is that, you know what, my responsibility is to protect the public.
Sure.
I'm sympathetic. I have empathy for the fact that somebody has mental illness. I'm sympathetic to the fact that that the life situation they were born into and that they've grown up in has been incredibly hard. But at the end of the day, if you hurt somebody, it has to be a consequence 100%. For hurting them. And so that's I think where our legislature as a primary source has kind of lost its way. We have a very progressive legislature that I think has taken the teeth out of our criminal code largely, has given tremendous rights and tremendous opportunities to people who would break the law, and made it harder than ever to be a police officer, made it harder than ever to prosecute.
Or even to want to be one.
That's exactly right.
Right.
You know, the difficulty that our cities and towns, and I saw this as city administrator, are having recruiting and retaining police officers is breathtaking. And so, and then there's further conversation. It seems that the legislature and people, who work there are super tone deaf to the idea that the cities and towns are becoming less safe, more dangerous, because we don't have the police. And frankly, the prosecutions we are not turning arrests into convictions.
Right.
So the prosecutions aren't as effective as they used to be. So like there's this whole kind of trickle, almost up effect that is making us less safe. And meanwhile, you have the folks in Boston saying, geez, we not only do we not support what ICE is doing, and not only do we want we want to fight the Flanagan bill. There's going to be pushback on that, and that's a great, incredible first step. Will has done a great job. Alan did a really nice job. Will really did the lion's share of that work. I know. And so there does not seem to be courage in our legislators to try to do what is safe and what is right, even if it is a little bit uncomfortable or even unpopular.
Sure.
And that's where I think in the next DA, you need a prosecutor, not a politician.
Sure.
I know that the representative from Dartmouth, Chris Markey, set up his OCPF, the campaign finance account today to run for DA. He'll be announcing. He's a Democrat.
Is. Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
And Chris is a good guy. I've known him for a long time, but he spent 15 years in the legislature. I don't know how he's going to answer for where we are now based upon the state of the law. I mean, I think that's going to be one of the big questions, because we don't need more policy about how to deal with mental health and how to deal with people who are undereducated.
Action. We need action. We
right?
do. And 34 Democrats, it makes it very difficult.
That's right.
And again, this is no hate to the Democrats, but it's just too many. When you have too many of one group, like there's no compromise. And unfortunately, like I think we look now and we say, you look at cities like Boston, and in Fall River, like, is it safe? Is it safe? Like I remember growing up in the city, and I could go anywhere. I could go anywhere and do anything on my bicycle. I fished every pond in this city, and I got there by my bike, and I never concerned myself with any danger, But now, like I walk this city, and even now I'm kind of like always looking over my shoulder, like you're never sure, you know what I mean? And quite frankly, I remember there used to be a sense of community where no matter where you walked, people wouldn't avoid looking at you. People would look at you, and people would say hello, good morning, good afternoon. Now it's just people will almost be avoidant. They go out of their way. But I digress. So next there. So you're working in your practice.
I am.
And then you all of a sudden have an epiphany. And that epiphany is you're going to run for DA.
Yes. And it's funny, even though the epiphany, and that's a good word for it, because it was kind of a, hey, you know what? Like this makes sense. My middle boy, who's a freshman at Brown right now, was given an award on Memorial Day this past year. Justin Thurber from Somerset. It was like the student of the year, and they get a thing from the House of Representatives. It was pretty cool.
Congratulations.
Thank you. He's a brilliant kid. He's a really neat guy. They all are. All three boys. I'm really proud of them. They're growing up to be really good men, and that's all you can really ask for.
Sure. Real quick, don't lose your train of thought. But you had a cool thing about their names. Could you just? I don't want to forget to ask.
How do you know
I don't want to
that?
forget that. But could you share that with the audience? Would you mind?
Okay, I'm going to share it with the audience, but you need to tell me how you found out about that. That's amazing.
Sure.
So my sons are Shepard, Harper, and Rex.
Okay.
So I have three boys, 21, 19, and 15. Shepard is the oldest, and they're named after the life of King David from the Bible. So, as you know, when he fought Goliath, he
Yep.
started out as a shepherd.
Yeah.
And then when he came into the court of King Saul, he calmed Saul's tormented spirit by playing his harp. And of course, Harper is also, the surname of Harper Lee,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
wrote To Kill a Mockingbird. So it worked on two levels, but primarily it was the life of David. And then Rex is Latin for king. And so David ultimately became king. He was a man after God's heart, which
That
is what I
so
want to
cool.
be.
That
Thank
is
you.
so cool.
I appreciate
that. Is
that.
really cool. Yeah.
And it's funny. I do believe, and I think I came to believe this when I was young, and we had a dog who I named Tyrant.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a tyrant. He was a terrible, terrible dog. And I kind of came to believe that there's something, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a name.
Yeah.
And what's really interesting is that my boys embody their names more completely than I could ever imagine.
Really?
My son Shepherd is going to school for animal behavior. He takes care of several colonies of capuchin monkeys down in college.
Oh, wow.
Has for 4 years.
Yeah.
Has this incredible patience and way with animals and caring for animals. Has a level of compassion that I do not have. And as a shepherd is truly embodying that. And Harper, just has such a peaceful and calm spirit, and I think has been successful academically because nothing really bothers him, nothing worries him, but without any sort of arrogance or pride. And Rex embodies the king thing in every way.
No kidding.
He's
Yeah.
a drummer. He's more comfortable on stage than I'm comfortable with.
Yeah,
I say,
yeah,
this kid, could be famous and
No-
unruly.
no
No,
kidding.
he's amazing, but
Yeah.
but you sit there and go, wow, that's stage presence. And so the three of them together have embodied their names in such a wild way. I would have never expected.
Seth, what an
it.
amazing
I'm proud of them.
experience, brother. Right? What an amazing experience, right?
I'm
Seriously.
super blessed.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's amazing.
To be married to the person I'm married to have the family I have. That's why whatever has happened or will happen in my life, there's never a moment of like fear or trepidation or concern, because it's like, in every way I've been blessed beyond measure. It's such an important part of how I think and what I believe and who I am. That it makes all these things more of an adventure than a ordeal.
Yeah, you're willing to take that chance. You're willing to step in a little bit further, right? Because you said you always have your foundation. So no matter what happens, you always fall back on your foundation. So you can take these opportunities, right?
Yeah.
And say, hey, you know what? I want to throw my hat in the ring. I want to make a difference. You know what I mean? And even now with this, like 2 days ago, like you're running, right? You're saying, hey, I got an incumbent here. And then all of a sudden 2 days ago, we get this news. How does that change everything for you? Like,
yeah, it was, I had heard rumors, but you hear a lot of, this is
yes, you hear a lot of things.
A lot of rumors.
Yes, absolutely.
So I didn't really think much about it. I was kind of ready for it. We had actually prepared a statement just in case.
Yeah.
But frankly, I didn't think it was going to happen for a while, if it happened at all.
Yeah.
And from everything I was seeing, the DA was really engaged. He was, he's moving people around. He's doing all sorts of things. And I'm like, I don't think this guy's retiring.
Yeah.
And that's okay. Whoever I run against, we're going to elevate the conversation. We're going to have a real race. It's going to be great. The people deserve that. The voters deserve a dialogue.
Yes.
Whoever ends up being on the other side. And I kind of thought it was going to be Tom Quinn. So when it did happen, it was a little bit surreal, because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I had heard this would happen. All of a sudden it happens.
Right,
The rumors almost never end up being true.
Right.
There's some kernel of
Yeah,
truth.
yeah.
And so when it happened, it was wild, and it's kind of been nonstop for the last 2 days. Because you got to jump on. There's momentum that comes with that.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
fundraising is probably the thing that I like least about a campaign.
But it's necessary.
It's
You
necessary.
You have to do it. Yeah, you have to.
You figure, there's a percentage on either side that are very engaged, a percentage of voters. But the people in the middle, you're not going to reach them without the resources to reach them. And so the fundraising is essential, but that's not something that comes naturally to me. I'll stand in front of a jury all day long. I'll ask them for a not guilty or a guilty, whichever side I'm on.
Sure.
I'll get up in front of 100 people and I'll talk and know exactly what I want to say and who I am as I'm saying it. There's something about saying, hey, will you?
I'm like
will you write me
same
a check?
thing. Yeah, I'm the same problem. I get the same problem.
It's weird, and I think part of it is that I've never thought of myself as a politician. I think of myself as a man of action. I think of myself as a father and a husband, a veteran, a lawyer, certainly. As an artist. But I've never thought of myself as a politician. So the idea of thinking, oh, people are just going to roll their eyes. Another politician asking for money.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to slip into that category for people, because I want them to understand that I'm trying to do this differently. But it's an essential part.
It's
of the
an
campaign.
absolute necessary.
Yeah.
So if people wanted to donate to your campaign, it's Aitken4da.com.
Yes, number 4.
Number 4.
AITKEN number 4da.com.
Okay.
They can find that pretty easily. Very much appreciated. And I'll tell you what, the support has been amazing. People have been generous and kind.
Yep.
But you need a lot of it to get the message.
Sure, absolutely. I've heard nothing but great things about you, by the way. I mean, I'm
appreciate
in the mingle of the circle, and
Thank you.
I mention it, and people are like, "Oh yeah, he's a good guy. He's a
That's
really
cool.
good guy."
Thank you.
Even Chris Peckham, as a matter of fact, because I know you spent some time with Chris.
Yeah, that was
and,
awesome.
Chris is like, "Oh, we went door to door. We were on
did.
adventures, man, and we had such a great time." And he said it. He goes, "He's just a good guy. He's a good, solid guy."
I appreciate
And to me, that's what we need. We need more solid people, man. We need people that are willing to communicate, people that are willing to sit down and have a conversation. I want the audience to know I didn't send you any questions in the mail. We didn't have any prior conversations. This is the first time we're meeting.
Yeah, we've never met.
Right, absolutely, right. And here we are, and you're stepping right up, and you're answering the questions, and it's like, and those are the things that matter. I think those are the most important parts to the constituents, because quite frankly, we need solid people, right? Because you hear it. It's all theater. You hear it all the time, and realizing that the people that are stepping up are true to what they say. So back to the epiphany. I don't want to get too far from that.
So I saw that, I realized, hey, here's, Justin Thurber, and he, was able to defeat, one of the longest serving Democrats in the House of Representatives. And, that takes courage. It takes, integrity. It takes focus. And I'm like, oh, geez, here we have an incumbent DA, and I feel like there's some changes that need to happen in the DA's office. And it's funny, no real criticism of Tom, just been there a long time. And I think it's easy to become kind of myopic.
Yeah, a little complacent.
Like like those nose blind commercials, where, everything smells like a dog, but you don't realize it.
Absolutely.
Right. It's like that, where
Yes.
you realize that, if you're in a place long enough, it's easy to lose a little bit of focus and not realize, where things are not working.
Yes.
And I was seeing more and more things that weren't working. And so that came together, and I remember sitting in the parking lot of the Swansea Town Hall. I was there to deliver something. Oh, actually, I'm on the zoning board, so I was there to deliver something for the zoning board.
Yeah.
And I got in my car, and I'm like, I'm gonna reach out to Thurber and Howitt and let them know I want to do this, and I did. Wow. And somebody contacted me a couple days later, and had a meeting at the Warm Sutter Club, and it was just like, it happened so fast.
Right.
And of course, what you don't realize is in the background they're kind of vetting you to find out, hey, are you really kind of who and what you say you are?
Right.
Which is great. Like I love the fact that it wasn't just, hey, we're the Republican Party, it's hard to get people, we'll take you. It was more like, no, we're going to make sure you're a quality person, and that was great. Yeah. And from there, put together a team. My body man, my external campaign manager is a guy from Swansea, retired state trooper, amazing guy. Yeah. We kind of joke that whenever we go out in the neighborhoods, we're probably better armed and more ammunition between the two of us than reasonable people should have. So we probably need to dial that back a little bit.
Yeah,
but he's
in Swansea, where there's no crime at all.
Well, we go all over the county. So I have him, and then a woman named Libby Riley from Somerset is my campaign manager and does my social media. She is incredible. And then Peter Ugerziel from Seekonk. He's the town moderator, but he's also a Republican strategist. So that's kind of the core team. And got some other folks, and it's just kind of grown from there. Yeah. I've made it to most of the towns, and walked around. I've done presentations, and now it's time to really get down to kind of the decision makers and stakeholders. Right. I want to meet, now that Tom has said he's not running. There's an opportunity, without putting police chiefs in an awkward position, to meet with them.
Yes.
To meet with police unions. To meet with all the public safety
Yep.
people. To talk to colleagues of mine who are attorneys who might have felt uncomfortable. They didn't want to alienate the DA. I understand that. The way his announcement works for me is it opens up those opportunities. And those are critical conversations to have, because I want to understand what the greatest challenge, I think I know what they are, but I don't want to assume anything. Right. What the greatest challenges are facing attorneys who are trying to make a living going to court.
Sure.
And, is there something that the DA's office can do better without compromising the integrity of a prosecution to make it work?
Right.
Is there something that we can do better to build the trust and confidence of police officers who are out there
100%.
making arrests
Yes.
and making sure that they know that their work is going to be taken seriously
Yep.
and prosecuted seriously?
Right.
So those are conversations that I'm excited to have. That's going to be the next couple months, as well as fundraising and then creating, some kind of video and written content so people have a better sense of who I am.
Sure. Sure. Well, I think it's important. Obviously, the character, right? It's all about the character.
Yeah.
And sitting down with these people and, for me, it's like you never realize you're in the situation until you're in the situation, right? And saying to yourself, wow, this is really going to happen. This is something I'm really going to do. And so do you see yourself doing this long term? Is this something you think, hey, I could do this for the next 10, 20 years? Or is it something you say, no, I can get this where I want it to go, and then, you know what, maybe I'll move on to other bigger things?
So I will say I don't think I'd move on to other bigger things, and here's why. My interest is not in running for something. My interest is doing the work. So I'm interested in being the DA. I'm not interested in being a politician. I'm not interested in being a legislator. I'm not interested in being governor or attorney general. I'm interested in working in the communities that I care about and that I know, where I've raised my family and built my career, right? That's where my investment is. That's where my heart is, and that's where I want to be. I'm interested in doing a job where I feel like I can meaningfully affect people where they are. One of the reasons why after 8 years I left the Army is after captain, you move farther and farther away from leading and being with soldiers. To me, the greatest experience you can have as a leader is to train your guys and your guys and girls, engineers. At that time it was only guys, but that's different. To train them to be excellent, and then to be excellent with them for the benefit of the mission. And to be able to be there firsthand, to be able to be, not just be in a planning or administrative, I'm kind of I'm not a hands-on leader in the way that I would micromanage, but I'm a hands-on leader in that I want to know, I want my people to know that I support and care about them, and will have their back. As long as they're doing the right thing, I will have their back no matter what. And when they're not doing the right thing, we're gonna have a conversation about it. And that's how I led soldiers. That's how I want to lead the DA's office. So I can't see another elected position where I'd be able to do that.
Gotcha.
It's all, the rest of it feels a little bit removed. I may change my mind, but I will also say that, if I win, when I win, I don't think it's healthy to do more than 2 terms. I think 8 years is long enough to put change in place, to raise up leaders, to give the people that work for you the absolute best resources and training to become great. And once you're past that 2-term mark, I think it's very easy to become myopic. I think it's very easy to lose perspective and lose focus. And at that point, you're no longer serving the people, you're serving yourself. I cannot live with the idea that I would get to that place. So to me, it's a 2-term investment. If the people bless me with a first and then a second, and entrust me with that, that's a solemn, it's a gift. It is an incredibly solemn moment of trust when that happens. And I don't see myself just hanging in there just to hang in there. It's just not who I am.
So real quick, you were assistant DA with Sam Sutter. What was that like?
Specifically for Sam Sutter, or just being an assistant DA?
Well, for Sam Sutter, because there was a lot going on at that time, and I just curious as to be able to do what you do and still be around all that noise. You know what I mean? Just
sure,
and not to be specific or anything, but just curious, man.
Yeah, so I was brand new at that time, and so there's something really fortunate in being able to fly under the radar because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so I wasn't really in a position to really interact with Sam that much or be part of the drama. And there was drama, there's no doubt.
Right.
That said, Sam, I'm always going to be grateful to Sam. He gave me my first job. There's probably things that in retrospect I'm like, oh, that probably shouldn't have worked that way.
Right.
Or there's times since then that Sam and I have disagreed. When I was a prosecutor, he was a defense attorney. Or even now that we're both on the defense. I mean, there's times you disagree.
Sure.
I will never have a bad word to say about Sam because he gave me that opportunity, and it changed everything. It crystallized in me what I wanted to do and where I wanted to be. It allowed me the opportunity to try literally hundreds of cases and become a lawyer who spent every day in court, learned from the judges, learned from the other lawyers, and there were some great lawyers back then, and there still are. But some of the legends were still around. I tried David George's last case. David George was this amazing New Bedford. His last jury trial was with me. He beat me bad, and he was literally barely alive, and he beat me. And he should have. He was great, and I learned so much from him. And there's 100 other people I could mention that I think the same way about. And so. I have no criticism of that time with Sam because it was such a great opportunity. I learned so much and became, in part, who I am today.
Sure. And then you work with Tom.
Worked with Tom.
And so this is the guy that you were running against.
Yeah.
So what's that like?
So, I mean, Tom is just such a dedicated public servant. He spent, how many years in the DA's office? Because in addition to 10 years as the DA, had been in that office for a long time before as first assistant and, other leadership positions. So,
would you say it was a big difference between the two?
Huge leadership difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, with Tom, the leadership more came from the people just below him. So there was a team of people, mostly from Plymouth.
Okay.
And here's the thing. If there's one criticism I have of the organization, it was that all of the leaders were from out of Bristol County. And, I do feel like if you're going to do a job that really requires, it's not like a geographical knowledge, it's a cultural knowledge, it's a personal knowledge, of knowing about this place and caring about this place and investing in this place. And so, the fact that all of his leadership was from Plymouth and from Rhode Island and from wherever else, I felt like there was a greater willingness to kind of roll their eyes at some of the defendants we were dealing with and just sort of write off, how significant the impact on their lives was that we were making. Doesn't mean you hold up.
No, right.
But I think there needs to be like a sense of like, okay, there's a huge, it's like the Stan Lee thing, right? With great power comes great responsibility.
Yes.
Like when you're wielding the kind of power to take away someone's liberty, I don't think you can ever lose sight of the fact that you have a responsibility to do that with complete integrity and resolve and transparency, because otherwise it becomes despotic, right? And so, so to me, when I think of working for Tom, I actually think more of working for the people that were in place right under Tom.
Gotcha.
And I just felt like there was a disconnect, and they just, it's not that they couldn't have cared about Bristol County in the same way I did. It's just, like when I think of just, the teachers that my boys have had at Gardner School and Brown School and Case, amazing, incredible, right? Just wonderful,
passionate people, right?
Passionate people
Yep.
who, again, not always treated as well as they should be, certainly not paid as well as they should be, and totally committed, right? And I can say that about, most of the guys at DCM for the city of Fall River, everyone in the finance department. I mean, you can go on and on.
Right.
People that absolutely deserve your attention and your respect don't always get it. And I think if you don't live here and you don't really know this place or take the time to learn about it, you miss that. I'm not from here. I'm from Worcester. I grew up in Paxton, outside of Worcester.
Yep.
And but I've been here almost 25 years at this point, and I've taken the time to care.
So you run. January comes.
Yep.
You're in.
Yep.
What's the first thing you're doing? This is day one. This is where I'm going, and this is what I'm doing.
Interesting. That's a great question. So the first thing I'm doing is an organizational study.
Okay.
Right? I'm not going to go in and start shaking things up immediately, because I think sometimes you change for the sake of change is not always healthy.
Agreed.
Right. And I'm also mindful of the fact that there's probably a lot of people who, now that Tom is not running, are really concerned.
Right.
For the next 8-9 months, their quality of life is not going to be what they would like it to be, because they're going to be wondering, do I have a job? It's a terrible, terrible thing to live with.
Sure.
And I'm not saying you end up keeping everybody, but you need to be mindful of the fact that these things affect everyday people.
Big changes.
Just trying to support their families, right?
Right.
So I think the first thing I'm going to do is sit down. I'm going to ask everybody to bring me what did you do in the last year? What cases did you do? How would you categorize your responsibilities? What did you do above and beyond what you were supposed to be doing?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel, did you feel seen? Did you feel heard and appreciated? What was the best thing that happened? Like a fairly comprehensive questionnaire.
Sure.
I think Herb Brooks, the coach of the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team, he actually gave all of his players this like 100-page psychological examination. And one of them, Craig, the goalie, who was so amazing in that bronze or that game, that the semifinal before they beat Finland for the gold when they beat Russia.
Yeah.
Craig said, "I'm not answering it." He goes, "Well, that's a choice, right?" So I want to get as much of a profile and give the people that work for me as much of an opportunity to explain who they are, what they care about, what they believe in, where they want to go. Because I think only by knowing that am I going to be able to understand, do I have the office I need? And if I need to make changes, what are those changes? I do know that I'm committed to investing more in the district court, which is kind of, for a lot of people, a pass-through court. Most young DAs come in and the only thing they're hoping to do is graduate from the district court and get up to superior court. That's where the serious cases are. That's where more money is.
Sure.
It's less of a caseload, but more sort of intense and complicated lawyering.
Sure.
Understandable.
You're going to get the Karen Reed case.
That's exactly
You're
right.
going to get the Karen Reed case, right?
Of course, in retrospect, who wants the Karen Reed case? But, that's a whole other thing.
Sure.
There's an actually interesting point about the Karen Reed case I'll get back to if you don't mind.
Yeah,
later.
please.
But,
Yes.
But I want to make the district court a place where people want to be and take a tremendous amount of pride in being, because I think that court affects so many lives in such a profound way. And by making it a place that's like, this is the Bush League, or this is the minor leagues at least,
Right.
Is not helpful to growth and development for those prosecutors while they're there. And frankly, it's not helpful to how we interact with victims and witnesses of crime.
Right.
So, creating a sense of importance and value in the district court is going to be critically important. And so all of the questioning that I want to do with all the people to really understand them is going to be with an eye toward a greater investment in training, support, and personnel in the district court. That's going to be the first focus. So
That's great.
yeah,
That's great.
I will want to hire some financial investigators as well. I think we don't have enough support in financial crimes, which is why, and police will tell you this too.
You say financial crimes, you mean like scams, Amazon cards with senior citizens,
Any of it.
that kind of stuff.
So anytime somebody takes money from either a business or a senior citizen or anything involving a theft of money that requires records, right? So it's one thing to, you knock somebody over the head and take their purse. That's different, right?
Okay.
That's an actual larceny from a person,
Right.
What I'm talking about is something that by either electronic or paper records, you can prove that somebody stole something that wasn't theirs.
Gotcha.
To me, there are police officers that don't know how to investigate those crimes. In fact, there are investigators in the DA's office that don't know how to. There are prosecutors that don't know how to investigate those crimes. We need to be better at that.
Sure.
Because those crimes languish. Those crimes, frankly, interact with legitimate business owners.
Yeah, people lose their livelihood.
They
Completely lose their livelihoods. Absolutely.
And elderly people that won't have another chance to build whatever wealth they have. So, so the stakes are high, and it's not something I think we've been great at.
So do you see AI being a big part of that? Because, obviously these AI crimes are literally out of control. I personally received a phone call from a friend from Florida who was a dear friend of mine, and I thought it was him. And it was him calling me from the hospital that he was in a car accident and that his lawyer was going to call me. It legit had me hook, line, and sinker until the lawyer asked me for Western Union.
There you go.
And it was at that point where I'm like, you know what? And I called Tony, and I'm like, he's like, hey, Bobby, what's going on? I'm like, oh, man. And I knew at that moment. And I say to myself, you know what? I consider myself a somewhat intelligent individual. Absolutely. You know what I mean? And, you're not going to get one on me, but they had me. They had me there for a minute because, AI really wasn't that popular. And to hear someone's voice on the other end of the phone, I believed what I was hearing. So easily, I could imagine my mom getting that call and hook, line, and sinker. There goes the bank, gone. You know what I mean?
And I think that's got to be something we pay attention to.
Right.
There is training, and if the training is in California, okay, so be it. I mean, like there has to be investment, both financial investment, investment of time and attention, into making sure that we're on the cutting edge of how we investigate and prosecute crime. So AI is certainly part of it. The financial crimes investigations is part of it. Having teams that make justice more accessible to people that have less of an ability to go to the police station. And
I think some people are afraid. Some people are afraid to say something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they don't want to be. But I just real quick, I want to bring this up. So in Boston, it wasn't too long ago where there was a shortage of prosecutors, and obviously we all have the right of a speedy trial, and it was happening. Like a lot of these people were just being let go, and these crimes weren't charged. How do you see something like that even happening? Like you would imagine that would never be the case, and that we're going to prosecute the crimes, and not let the criminals just walk out the door because we can't provide what we promised them.
So was that the prosecutor shortage, or was that the bar advocate shortage?
Bar advocate shortage.
Okay.
Yes, it was.
So whichever side the shortage exists, because there have been shortages as prosecutors.
Yes.
The amount of turnover in prosecutors, just needing to make more money, needing better opportunity, needing more assurances they're going to move up, right? That has created shortages in the past, no doubt. The bar advocate thing was interesting because bar advocates get $75 an hour to represent criminals. And the average attorney is going to charge probably closer to $350 an hour to represent a client. And so there's a disparity between what the bar advocate gets versus what the private attorney gets. But then there's the argument that the private attorney has to advertise and takes on all the risk.
Yeah, I get the overhead, right?
Exactly.
Right.
So there's a lot of reasonable people that could disagree about what the problem really is before we get to how to solve it.
Sure.
That said, there was a lot of bar advocates that were saying, hey, if you look at every other state, they're paying their court-appointed lawyers much, much more than they pay in Massachusetts, which is a little bit funny because you can almost understand why Massachusetts doesn't fund its DA's offices very well, and it doesn't. The budgets are remarkably small for each office because it's not in the best interest of progressives to be tough on crime. I think progressives want more social programming, and they want more
social
psychologists and sociologists, rather than police.
Exactly.
And I also sort of understand the idea, that these folks have. I don't understand it, but I'm aware of it. That it's better to be able to make people dependent on government. I mean, that's really the progressive agenda. Is if you can create a number of entitlements and programs, people become
100%.
dependent on government.
100%.
And then once they become dependent on government, they're much easier to control. I mean, that's the socialist playbook, right? It's the communist playbook.
Yes.
It's just two sides of the same coin.
Absolutely.
And so the idea is, well, geez, we're not going to prosecute crime. We're just going to enable the people that otherwise would be in a position of committing crimes. And what's funny about that is you would think they would fund the court-appointed lawyers, the defense attorneys, much better because it's sort of consistent with that entire worldview.
Yeah, right.
Weirdly, they still haven't. They did bring up the rate a little bit, have an agreement to do it over a couple of years. But the idea that people are just being let out because there wasn't an absolute human cry about it is breathtaking because. The fact is these folks were on strike. I mean, they're volunteer lawyers. They volunteer to get paid a lesser amount to do what amounts to a public service. I do some court-appointed work, and I love it because I just like helping people that otherwise wouldn't be able to help themselves. I think it's a valuable service. But at the same time, the way they've set up the system, there's a lot of lawyers whose entire practice is court-appointed. It's all they've got. So they're as much at the mercy of the legislature as the defendants that they represent. So it creates this whole almost sort of quasi-welfare state.
Yeah. It's a shame that it even gets to that point, though.
Shame.
Like you
never
couldn't work that. You can't work this out. Like you got to wait until you're literally letting people just off the hook. You know what I mean? And
but here's the thing: when you say how do we get there, I think the biggest reason is we spend $4 billion on housing immigrants, right? To some extent at the expense of actual American citizens who are on the street, who can't afford their bills, can't afford their apartments, can't afford veterans, right? Veterans who serve this country and can't afford their apartment or groceries. Any number of constituents who I believe should be in line ahead of those folks. I don't want to be a dispassionate jerk. But at the end of the day, I feel like I have an obligation to the people that came here and have paid dues
100%.
and are doing the best they can.
Absolutely.
And
Right.
just not making it. Okay.
Right.
I don't have a problem with that.
Right.
When you come here for a handout, I've got a problem with that.
Sure.
And that's probably at the heart of my Republican sensibility. Is that I think, first of all, government should not be the source of everybody's support. That doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
And I believe in people's ability to make their own luck and make their own fortune more than I believe in government's right to tell you what that fortune and what that luck is going to be.
Absolutely.
So that's how we got there. I think we got there because the state of Massachusetts could not afford to pay these court-appointed lawyers because they had already spent $4 billion on illegal immigrants in hotels paying full rack rate, which is breathtaking. That never ever gets charged.
Right.
And then in addition to that, all the other entitlements and handandouts.
It's got to come from somewhere, right? And
that's
it bleeds out, and that's what ends up
that was the
happening.
last. Was the last priority.
So do you see the shift happening? I think I see it. I think we're finally getting to that point where most people are, even the ones that are over here a little bit, are going, you know what? Because I'm an independent, and I'm a seeker of common sense. Like but I always seem to be on the conservative end of it because I want common sense. Like if I'm working hard, I expect that you would work hard as well. If I got to dig a hole, grab a shovel. We're going to do this together. That's right. And I think when you lose sense of that and people become, like to your point, dependent, they don't know any other way. And that's my argument. My argument is, we have these people come over here. We provide them with all of these means. There's no struggle. No. Like they're not hungry. They're not looking for food. So why would they contribute? Why would they be a part of society? There's no reason to do that.
Yeah.
So I think the more and more that we push away from that, when you look at these, what's happening in Minnesota with these people with ICE and none of it makes sense to me. And I say to myself, why would you? Obviously they're getting these illegals out. A lot of these are sex offenders. They're pedophiles. So why are you opposed to that? Why are you stopping them from doing their jobs? Because quite frankly, I think Obama was like 330,000 immigrants that he deported, and ICE did that, and nobody said anything. So it's the same situation happening again. Why is it a problem now? And again, I believe the narrative is painted that way. I think the media has a big part of that. Huge. But at the end of the day, it's the everyday citizen that pays the consequences. It's the Will Flanagans that are walking down the street minding their business, and their life is changed forever.
That's right.
A father, a husband, and that whole family has been affected by that forever. Oh, yeah. So, I look at people like you to be like, hey, we got to stop this. Like this is no longer effective. Right. And if anybody who thinks otherwise, they need to be removed. This just does not work anymore. And I think, and again, I had Boomer on, Manny was on, and not to be doom and gloom, but when I look at the numbers and I say, wow, 34 Democrats and 4 Republicans, and how do you even poke in there? How do you get to these people to be like, we're not going to do this anymore? Because it goes up to the Maura Healey's of the world, and and the Michelle Wu's, and the bus lanes, and the congestion tax, and it gets to a point where you're like, I'm already paying 40% of my money to the government.
It's unbelievable.
And now you want to take the rest of what I have, right? So I got to pay for your heat pump in your house. I mean, not to get too far off the subject here, but I think it's the encompassing government. I think it's what it has become. It's morphed into this entity that you can't say anything, because if you say something, you're a racist. If you say something, you're opposed to an idea. But the truth is, I just want everybody to work for their, look, carry the weight. I will, listen, if you need help, I will help you. But I'm not going to give you all I got.
Right.
It's just at what expense, at what cost, And it really starts at your end of it. And that is saying, hey, police, we believe in you. And we know that you're going out there and you're risking your life every day for the community, and we're going to support you in every way we should. If it's a parking ticket, if it's a murder, it doesn't make a difference. It gets treated the same way. It doesn't get brushed away, because that's the problem now. Police don't pull over cars anymore. Why? Because what's the point?
Right.
What's the point? I pull over this guy. He doesn't have a license anyway, right? He's an immigrant. Now I'm going to have to deal with the situation where now I have to defend myself, right?
Yeah.
It's not worth it. If I pull this car over, this guy shoots me. There goes. It's over. So how do we motivate them, right?
Well, in what's really interesting about what you're saying is it's sort of the opposite of what they used to call broken windows theory. So, broken windows theory is this idea that we're going to seek out essentially the little things. We're going to seek out the broken windows and the property that's disheveled, and the guy selling unlicensed cigarettes, all the
Absolutely.
stupid little crimes.
What they did in New York.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
But of course, it ended because the progressives said, "Oh, well, no,
you're profiling.
You're profiling, and it impacts certain disenfranchised communities and all this other stuff." It's like, no, what it does is it hits things when they're small before they become big.
Absolutely.
And if you put pressure on the little things, sometimes you eradicate the big things.
Yes.
And so, when most people think of the DA, they think of the press conferences about the big and terrible crimes. And no one really thinks about the little things that you were thinking of.
Yep.
And part of it is that they don't seem significant. Okay. Part of it is that there's less and less of them being prosecuted or being arrested because the police are like, oh, nobody cares anyway. That actually has to be our renewed focus.
Yes.
Like, of course we're going to prosecute the murders and the rapes and the terrible, terrible crimes.
Sure.
Of course we are. But we're going to renew our focus on the small stuff because the small stuff is actually how you restore faith that people have
Absolutely.
in the you create peace of mind and safety in neighborhoods.
Yes.
Because you are making sure that the small things are paid attention to.
Absolutely. You said it as soon as you walked in.
Yeah, and it's a
nose
trickle.
blind, right?
That's
Because you get nose blind. New Bedford is doing it.
Yeah.
New Bedford just released an app that is based on the broken window theory. I had all the city council on the show,
Okay.
one by one, and each one of them that came on, I brought that up because I think it's important. I believe that is such a small piece that can change everything.
I agree.
Right? The graffiti, the broken windows, the car that's been sitting there for 6 months with flat tires, like all of those things. That's what we need to focus on, right? And and I think everything else comes along with that. And again, not to get too far off, but you think of the homeless community. There's a lot that goes on with that. I think people say, well, the homeless, they're cold and they're hungry. Okay, but what about the crime that we don't need to know is happening? Right? There are people being raped. There are people being robbed. Like, these people are in the woods. There's nobody looking out for them, right? So who's looking out for these people, right? Nobody, because they put themselves in a situation that they're unhelpable. And who's going to go in there? What cop is going to go in there risking his life,
Sure.
right, for someone that can't help themselves,
right?
So I think there's so much. I mean, again, there's so much going on, but I think the most important piece, I should say, are the people in place that are going to drive these motives, right? Because we have to get past this ridiculousness of men in ladies' bathrooms, and like it just. I'm telling you, like it's hard to say it, but again, I'm not a huge Nick Fuentes fan, but sometimes when he says things and I hear it, I say to myself, oh, he's right. Like, why are we afraid to speak our minds? Like, you've created a culture that people are afraid to say how they feel just because of the way they're going to be perceived.
Right.
Well, the First Amendment says otherwise. You know what I mean? So I think that now we have to look, if there's ever going to be a Republican DA, it's now. It's you, Seth. You know what I mean? Like, this is what we need. And I think the people in the community realize now that they want to be safe. They want to have a Forever Celebrates America. They want to have, a feast, a Portuguese feast, and not be concerned, right? And it's people like you that are going to keep us safe. But if people don't, and I'll say this over and over again, if people don't show up, then it's for nothing, right? Because, we had a mayoral vote, the city council mayoral vote. We had 14,000 people show up. We have 100,000 people that live in the city.
Isn't that amazing?
Isn't
That's
that
so crazy?
right? It's insane to me, the apathy and just like the idea that these people just don't show up. Right. And for me, I was beating that drum the whole way. I wasn't supporting any one individual candidate. I ended up supporting Gabriel at the end, but the whole way I had Coogan on the show, and it was all about the vote. I was like, rock the vote.
Yeah.
Let's get people to remember the rock the vote.
Oh, yeah.
Let's get people to show up and vote, and that was really my motivator. And I was so disappointed when the numbers came out, and I'm like, wow, just 14,000 people. So what does that mean? Like, what does that mean for you?
So incremental change, though. Here's the thing. I think the fact that there are on the ballot this coming November, there are going to be credible Republican candidates. The fact that people feel like they have a choice, my hope, and I could be totally naive, my hope is that they're going to look at that and they're going to say, you know what? That makes my vote worthwhile. Like, I feel like I have a choice. I feel like I have a say. For a long time in Massachusetts, there's been this feeling that your vote doesn't matter.
Right.
Certainly voting for president, right? For a long time, I felt like, geez, whoever I vote for, it's, we're going to go, we're going to go blue.
Right. Right.
Fair enough. Okay, that's how the system works. But on a local level, that should not be the case.
Right.
People should, one, understand what the problems are. Two, understand that there's people who are trying to solve them. And 3, understand that the only way any of that's going to make any difference at all is if they vote.
Right.
One of the things I learned in the Army very early on is that the best way to get in trouble is to come with a problem and no solution. But I think there's a lot of folks that have become very satisfied yelling about the problems,
Sure.
but not being willing to do the things you need to do in order to put solutions in place. One of those things to build, to have solutions come to the fore is to put people in place in elected office who are going to bring the solutions.
Absolutely. Right.
And I will say, the change in the city council this year, I think, Chris Peckham and, both and Canuel,
Yep.
I mean, a belief that there was, people that had ideas and the resolve to carry those ideas out, and that those ideas were consistent with what the people of Fall River were concerned about. I love that.
Yes.
The fact that also there were people that retained their seats because they have been solutions people.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, the Pontes, the Kadims.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right.
and
right.
the Raposos.
Yes. Yes.
So those two things together, and the idea that we have more Republican candidates, and I'm not saying that just as a Republican, I'm saying that as somebody who cares about an elevated conversation during the race and people feeling like they have a choice. All that stuff together gives me some hope that we are at least in it's a slow, low angle trajectory, but it's still upward.
So,
And
Seth,
I
what do
think
you say to the
we're in
bottom
good
feeders?
shape.
What do you say to the and the term? I say the term bottom feeders, and it's not a derogatory term. It's something that I've coined on the show, and that is the people that don't want change. And the reason they don't want change is because it affects them financially.
Sure.
Right? Because when it was the mayoral campaign, I was out there talking and mingling with people, and some people were like, "Hey, listen, man, for example, I do trash." And if there's a change up top, like I'm not going to be doing trash no more. So
Fair enough.
I can't have that. So what do you say to those people?
First, I get it. Okay, I'm not the kind of person that's like, no, you should do the thing that is going to deprive you of your livelihood. That's unreasonable and it's unrealistic.
Yep.
But at the same time, as long as we're only looking out for ourselves, we're never going to be any better.
Right.
And I do think that there's a lot of people that have felt betrayed and left behind, by their elected and appointed officials over time. Probably especially in Fall River, it certainly feels that way. There's not a lot of trust in government, not a lot of trust in authority, and I can see why. I get it. But here's the thing: as long as you take the position of, hey, I got to look out for number one. If everyone does that, then there is never a concerted effort to do anything. We're never able to build anything.
Right.
We're never able to move forward.
Yeah.
And we're just stuck in the past.
Right.
And so I think there are definitely people out there, and there's even some media people out there.
Absolutely.
Media with air quotes.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Who have a real interest in making sure that we never move forward, which is really too bad. Because I think when they look at it, say, well, what if it gets worse?
Right.
Okay, you know what? It might.
Right.
When I was city administrator, there was a review of the charter, and there was a conversation about do we allow the mayor's term to be 4 years? And I've always felt that a 2-year mayoral term, against the backdrop of the history of mayoral terms in the city, has a chilling effect on who would be willing to run, right? And I think as long as it's harder and harder to get people to run for these offices because they know what they're going to endure while they're there, and they know it's only 2 years, and they're not sure what they're going to do afterward, the less likely you are to make real progress.
Right.
And so I said, hey, well, I think 4 years makes sense. And I wasn't officially part of it. I just gave my 2 cents.
Right. Right.
And they said, well, what if he's bad? What if she's bad? Okay, that happens.
Right.
So put measures in place to figure it out.
Sure.
But
Sure.
but don't don't ensure that no change happens and no progress happens just because it might not work out.
Right. Well, I feel like you're always campaigning, right? 2 years, it's like you don't have enough time to get any
Right.
momentum. You're campaigning all over again. Like to me, it doesn't make any sense. How do you feel about a city manager? I know that's been thrown around as well. Like, doing away with having a mayor altogether and doing a city manager.
So that's not exactly the Worcester model. But Worcester has a highly paid, highly qualified city manager and a more ceremonial mayor. So it's sort of it's the next step after that.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that works really well. it does give the city council much more power because that city manager becomes more beholden to the council depending on how that's set up. So what you essentially have, depending on how the council works, is you have a city manager who could end up being a puppet of the council, unless you have a really strong manager who, really understands all of it, and then they're going to be able to sort of navigate through that and be effective. I would worry about certain agendas of different folks that might end up being on the council in the future, trying to co-opt a city manager for their own ends.
Right.
That said, happens with the mayor too.
Right.
And I'm not saying this mayor. I'm just saying it can't happen with a mayor.
Right.
So maybe the thing I'm concerned about is really not a new problem. There's potential pitfalls to whatever model you use.
Right.
I do think that a city manager is going to make decisions that are less political and more, financially and economic development driven.
Right.
And that probably would benefit the city tremendously.
I think we need to run the city like a business at this point. I mean, the infrastructure is just terrible. And I not just talk about Fall River. We could talk about places like Worcester. We could talk about Taunton. We could talk about these bigger cities that, the infrastructure is just terrible. There's no money to fix the streets. The fire departments are full. The last city council meeting, it was just so heartbroken. To hear that, these firefighters are in, the headquarters and it's asbestos and, the roof's leaking and they don't have a shower to take a shower and the windows don't open. And you say to yourself, again, these are people that are risking their lives for our well-being. Yep. And we can't even provide them, with a decent, infrastructure, a place to sleep, a place to take a shower, right. How do we even get there? And of course, the big question here is, how do we get here, right? That's because this didn't just happen yesterday, right? This is a long period of time where people become complacent, and again, that's kind of like I say to myself, you mentioned, the stagnant of the position to get new people in to be like, no, this can't be like this, right? We know that this is wrong for all the right reasons, So rather than just perpetuate this constant, we say, listen, it's time for change. And I think people that are involved and are firsthand affected by that, the Gabriel House, right? Those people, they would have a different opinion than just the bottom feeders, right?
Sure.
So I think it's time for change. I think people like yourself that are stepping up, the Cliff Pontes of the world, like you mentioned, Andrew Raposo, Chris Peckham. These are people that they're vocal. They're willing to step up. They're willing to say something. And I don't want to speak for them, but I believe it's that Republican kind of mindset, that conservative mindset that says, look, everybody pick up a shovel. We all go to work. It can't be half of you getting nothing and the other half getting everything.
Is right.
It can't be that way anymore. So, kind of rounding this all up. To be at this point now, man, obviously you have an amazing life. You have an amazing family life. And, I can see all the reasons why you're running. Because sometimes, people can sit down and they'll run for certain offices. And for me personally, it's I always try to figure out why. Why are they there? Why are they doing this? And sometimes, people, it's for the money. Sometimes people, it's for the popularity, for whatever it is. But I can see that, you have a genuinely wonderful life. And for all those reasons, I can see why you would want to be running for DA. Being in law, being in the military, running through all these years, being involved in all this, it makes sense to me. I can see why you are where you are.
Appreciate that.
I can see it. And they were right. People said you have great energy, right? People said, oh, he's a good guy. He's great to talk to. And I could see that you're very methodical, right? You're thinking, and I think that's what we need. Enough with this noise and having people just be honest and say, hey, look, this is the way it has to be. Because even the sheriffs, working with the sheriff's department, that's not easy, man.
No.
Right? That's in itself is monumental. Yeah. And of course, and that's an elected position as well. Yeah. So that's a constant. You know what I mean? Do you have a relationship with these sheriffs now? These people that you talk to?
So I don't have a relationship with Haru.
Okay.
And frankly, I think he and I are probably going to disagree about some things, but like anything, you have to be willing to have a conversation.
Sure.
And thoughtful people can disagree about things that they care about.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I have a good relationship with the former sheriff, Tom Hutchinson, amazing man. I think he cared deeply about that mission and about those people.
Sure did.
And so, I think the sheriff, has a slightly different approach, which I'm not sure makes us safer, to be very honest with you. And so we'll see how that relationship shapes up.
Yeah. So that'd be great. At least, get some conversation flow in there, right? Absolutely. You have to. You have to.
Yeah.
Because it's such an important part of our community. It really is. Because, granted the jail, but there's a lot of rehabilitation that happens there. Like a lot of people are in and out fairly quickly, and I think that they do a lot of good programs. But I will agree with you. Tom, I like Tom myself.
Tom's great.
Yeah, Tom was great. Tom was great. A couple of times I had the opportunity to talk to him, just nonchalant, nothing formal. And they were great conversations. Yeah. They really were. Yeah. This is amazing, man. I really appreciate you coming in here today,
Thanks for
man, and
having
taking
me.
the time to come in. And so what do you have coming up? So any events that are coming up that you want to let the audience know about? Fundraisers?
Right now, no events planned.
Okay.
So I just had one in Taunton. We're kind of looking at what fundraisers will look like over the next couple months.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously with Representative Markey throwing his hat in the ring, at least every indication is that that's imminent.
Sure.
There's probably going to be some assessment of where do we think the vulnerabilities are? Where do we think, our strengths are? Where do we think our vulnerabilities are?
Sure.
And so there's going to be a lot of assessment. There's probably going to be a lot of fundraising over, either over the telephone, over social media, via text, via email. That is the most critically important thing because basically from Labor Day to November, that is when you are really able to reach that incredibly small number of people that are going to decide the election.
Sure.
The vast majority of people have made up their mind, either not to vote, which is tragic, or they made up their mind, hey, I'm going to vote, down the party line, one or the other, or I'm going to vote for Seth because I know him. I'm going to vote for Chris because I know him. Okay.
Yeah.
The number of people, and there was a movie about this where there turned out to be like one guy who was still undecided, and they had to convince him. It's not that small, but it's small.
Yeah.
The number of people that are not that engaged right now that will start thinking about this come the fall. Those are the people that will end up deciding the election that need to be reached. And to reach them is going to take money. It's going to take signs. It's going to take advertising. It's going to take all that stuff. And it's a little bit too bad for a job like this to come down to marketing. But if that's the only way to get people's attention and to convey your message, that's what we have to do. So that's the big focus right now. Probably until the summer. I'm going to be going to some things, and my biggest thing, and this is something I'd love for people to think about. Anybody who wants to host like a little coffee or cocktail hour or whatever in their home, 7 to 10 of their friends, and have a conversation about what our cities and towns need. I would love that.
Okay.
I would love that because to me, there's a fundraising opportunity there. Great.
Yep.
But much more importantly, there's a relationship building opportunity there. And I think in this particular position, if you're going to ask somebody for their vote, and I think that's a big thing to ask for, I would like to be able to do that face to face, and I would like to do that based upon them having had the opportunity to ask me whatever questions they're going to ask.
Sure.
Me. And I don't care whether those are comfortable questions or not. Why'd you leave the city? I'll talk to anybody about that.
Sure.
Why do you support ICE? I'll have that conversation. And the answer is I support the law, and ICE is enforcing the law.
Absolutely.
Even if I feel like from a style standpoint, I might do it a little bit differently. I don't get to pick and choose what laws I enforce or what law enforcement agencies I like. They are enforcing the law. Yeah. They're a law enforcement agency. I support that.
And they deserve that respect.
Yes.
So,
I'll have that conversation with anybody. And, it's not going to be demeaning. It's not going to be insulting. It's going to be respectful. But
it's a conversation that it needs to be had. It's a conversation that needs to be had.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what I'm looking forward to over the next several months is, anybody who wants to get a group of their friends together and talk about it, I'll be there. And then just take a look at, I have, Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. And I'm posting, what I'm doing and where I'm going. And most importantly, I just need people's support. If you want to put a yard sign, you want to donate, whatever you want to do.
Do you think Chris would have ran if Tom didn't retire?
So from what I understand, and this is a really interesting thing, and I don't mind saying this. So you might recall that when Sam Sutter came into office, when he beat Paul Walsh, Chris was very high up in the Walsh office, and at some point, I believe, announced a run, and I think it might have been, I don't know exactly when it was, but he announced a run and then withdrew. and then left the office because there was a disagreement with Sam. I forget exactly how it took place, and I wasn't privy to it. But you hear a lot of different versions of it. And everyone said, oh, Chris has wanted that office for years. And I actually think, you know what it was? I think it was when Sam was talking about running for Congress or something. I think Chris announced it at a committee and then said no.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that Chris chose not to run to give room for Tom to be the DA. And even though I respect that friendship, right? He respected Tom and said, okay, I'm going to stay on the side.
Yeah.
There is a funny sense of entitlement. Like, it's kind of like, I'll wait because I'll be able to get the job whenever I want. It is kind of how the left lives here in Massachusetts. There's a sense of like, well, whenever I decide to do it, I'll be successful because I'm a Democrat and because I have a family name that's been in Bristol County forever.
Right.
And everyone recognizes me. And
the Mike Roderick's of the world, 20 years uncontested.
Yeah. and so to me, it's like, like the fact that Chris, stepped aside for Tom was kind.
Yeah.
But I think it also speaks to this unspoken expectation that a lot of Democrats and a lot of the old families have here in Bristol County. Yeah. We talked a little bit about, the bottom feeders and all the different, sort of, it's like soil. It has all these different levels, I think there's a lot of people that feel disenfranchised because they know that for many, many years, there's been a small number of families, old political power-broking families that have been able to pretty much do what they want when they want. And if you look at where their kids are or where their kids are, many of them hold really important positions of
Absolutely.
power.
Nepotism all over the place.
And it seems more prevalent here than any place I've ever been. And I don't know that people necessarily realize it because there's familiarity and comfort. And so you keep voting for the name you recognize.
Absolutely.
And I think the thing,
Linda Pereiras of the world, that it's just
right, and and you can go on. I mean, just
Yes.
and Chris's dad was mayor of New Bedford.
Yeah.
And that's great.
Yeah.
And okay, do I want to create a reputation and a legacy that will help my boys? Sure, but I also want them to work for what they have. Of
course.
And so, to me, the biggest thing I see when I see the Quinns and the legacy there and the Markeys and there's fill in the blank. There's other names.
Absolutely.
And you look at the dedication to those names that people have had when they vote. How has that worked out?
Right.
Like, has that made us better and safer?
Look around.
I don't think so.
No. Look at the police department.
Right.
Look at the Florida Police Department.
Yeah. It has certainly benefited those families. But I don't know that it's benefited you and I and the people we care about. It hasn't benefited the average person.
Right.
And so that's probably my biggest criticism, is that we don't need people to vote for the names they recognize. I think we need people to vote for the principles and character they recognize.
Absolutely.
The things that they either see in themselves or would like to see in themselves, the ideals that they believe will make their lives better.
Right.
And that's kind of the whole thing for me. That's the reason I'm running, is I really believe there's an opportunity to make people's lives better by making their neighborhoods safer. And we do that by converting more arrests into convictions, by holding people accountable. That's the whole thing.
Right.
So I think that's probably the thing I would implore people to think about is when you think about what you're recognizing in that candidate, is it just a name or is it something deeper?
Absolutely. You have an opportunity. Like, use the vote. This is an opportunity.
That's right.
I love your boots. Listen, I'm a cowboy boots myself.
Yeah.
I love them. Those are can we see those? Look at those. Those are fantastic. I like those. I'm gonna get a pair of those.
Man.
I almost wore mine. Tonight. I should have wore them. So, Seth, I just want to offer you the studio. Like, we do a live show here. So I happened to do one with Gabriel the other day where you come in, we do a live show, the audience participates. So if that's something that you're interested in doing, maybe we go into a couple of weeks and then we come back, we schedule it.
Oh, that'd be so much fun.
We'll put it out there and we'll have because I know you want to interact with the audience.
Yeah.
I think the last episode we did with Gabriel We had over 1,400 people in there. It was
That's
like,
awesome.
yeah, it was a ridiculous amount of comments. People had a lot of questions. We have call-ins. People can call into the show, speak
Great.
to you directly. So
Yeah.
I'd love to offer that to you, man. I believe in you.
I appreciate
You have amazing energy, bro. And
Thank
you got my vote. You got my vote. And I want other people to see that as well. Listen, I did the research. Like, I'm not just sitting here based on our interview. Our interview, you wooed me. You put me over the top. But prior to that, man, I did the research here, and you're a class actor, and clearly you're on the right path, and you want good things for good people, and you've built your success, and I see that you want that for others. And so for me, I'm all about that. I'm passionate about that because a lot of people say it, but they don't show it. You know what I mean? Right. Clearly you have, you got the checks, man. You got the checks.
Very kind.
So real quick,
Thanks,
again, if people want to donate and support you,
Aitken, Aitken, 4da.com.
Excellent. And they could do that on Facebook. You're also Facebook, Instagram. It's the same.
Yeah, so it's all the same.
Yeah.
The website is the easiest place to donate.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what, if you have questions, give me a call, text me.
Okay.
508-989-8865. That's my cell phone.
Excellent.
I am really an open book, and I want to engage with voters as much as I can.
It matters.
So if anybody has questions and they want to know where I stand on really anything, I'll talk about it.
We're in desperate need, sir. We need leadership. We need people to step up, and I appreciate you doing this, Seth. Thank you so much. I hope I can call you friend, sir.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, and I will see you again when we do the live cast, all right? I appreciate you. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Really appreciate it. Boy, it's been a couple of hours. It's been a long day. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to the show. Make sure you go ahead and support Seth, whatever he needs. And remember, everybody, always remember that all roads lead here. Hey, happy birthday, Jody. Happy birthday, buddy.
Happy birthday,
all right,
Jody.
peace out. Take care.